You ever have one of those moments that burns itself into your memory? Not because of what happened, but because of what it revealed about you. That moment where your voice comes out sharper than you meant, your chest feels tight, and suddenly, every pair of eyes around you freezes, and you realize you just became the villain in someone else's story. That was me, at a restaurant, at 34 weeks pregnant, over a plate of oysters I couldn't even eat. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, doesn't it? But in that moment, it didn't feel ridiculous. It felt like something inside me finally cracked. Something I'd been holding together with smiles, patience, and the kind of self-control only a pregnant woman surrounded by alcohol and seafood can understand. I keep replaying it in my head. The flicker of her expression, the sting of her words, and then my voice. Sharp. Cold. Would you like us to order less? And just like that, everything went quiet. But maybe I should start from the beginning. That evening had started off normal enough. My husband Daniel texted me after work. Raw bar at 6? It was one of those places we loved before pregnancy. Sleek white marble counters, dim amber lighting, the faint scent of lemon and brine in the air. I used to love sitting beside him there, our fingers brushing as we reached for oysters, laughing over beers I could never quite finish. But tonight, I wasn't there to indulge. I was there to feel human again, to feel like Violet, not the woman who hadn't seen her toes in months, or the one who cried over TV commercials, or the one who woke up every night with acid crawling up her throat. Just Violet. When I walked in, Daniel and my friend Marissa were already there, talking to the server, a young woman, maybe mid-20s, with this breezy confidence that made you feel like she'd seen every kind of customer and knew how to handle them. I remember her, looking at me, her eyes sweeping over my belly, and she smirked. "I see you waddling up, you can't eat here." I laughed. God, I laughed too easily back then. I thought she was just being cheeky. I said, "Don't worry, I'm just here to live vicariously." We all chuckled, but there was something off about her tone. It wasn't warmth, it was mockery disguised as humor. Still, I brushed it off. I didn't want to be that pregnant woman, the one who takes everything personally, who cries over bad jokes. She took our drink orders, a beer for Daniel, a glass of white for Marissa, and sparkling water for me. "Oh, no fun tonight?" she said as she scribbled. I smiled tightly. Guess not. Daniel was excitedly talking about trying new oysters. I smiled watching him. He never used to like them, but I'd taught him everything. How to tell a blue point from a Kumamoto, how to add just the right squeeze of lemon, how to slurp without spilling. It was our thing. So when he asked her about the oyster selection, I chimed in naturally. "Try the Beausoleil," I told him. "They're small, sweet. You'd like them better than the briny ones." That's when I noticed her expression shift. She arched an eyebrow, smirked again. Someone's feeling bossy tonight. I blinked. Was she joking again? I couldn't tell. Her tone was sharp around the edges. Marissa gave me a side glance. That awkward, is she serious? Kind of look, but I just smiled. "He asked for my opinion," I said lightly. I tried to keep my voice even, calm, but inside, I felt this subtle prickle, that strange mixture of embarrassment and irritation that you can't quite explain. She walked away, and I exhaled. "Maybe she's just teasing," Daniel said, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I nodded. "Maybe." The oysters came, glistening on ice, lemon wedges bright against the silver tray. Daniel looked happy, and for a moment, I forgot everything. Watching him eat, I almost felt like myself again. When he finished the first round, he looked up and said, "I want more." "Which ones were those?" I told him, and he nodded, flagging down the server. She came over, that same smirk still playing at the corners of her mouth. Daniel looked at me. You tell her which ones I liked, so I did. I started to speak, gently, but she cut me off with a scoff. You know, you really don't let this guy order anything for himself, huh? Something in me snapped. It wasn't just her words. It was the tone, the assumption, the dismissal. The way her eyes lingered on my belly like I was some overbearing wife controlling her husband's meal choices because I couldn't eat them myself. Then she said it. That final, venom-laced line that pulled the air out of my chest. I hope you come back when you're not pregnant so I can get to know the real you. The real me. It was the way she said it. Like I wasn't a real person right now. Like I was just hormones and swollen feet and bad moods wrapped in a floral maternity dress. My mouth opened before my brain could catch up. Would you like us to order less? The silence was immediate. Her smirk vanished. She blinked, once, twice, then turned on her heel and walked away. When she came back, it wasn't her. It was a new server. Polite, quiet, efficient. Daniel looked at me, eyebrows raised. You okay? I don't know, I whispered. And the truth is, I didn't. The rest of the evening blurred into something muted and gray. The new server, a quiet man with kind eyes, took over seamlessly, but the air around our table had already changed. It wasn't the same laughter-filled place we'd walked into. It was tighter now, fragile, like everyone was scared to breathe wrong. Marissa kept making small talk, bless her, but her voice sounded too cheerful, like she was trying to cover a stain with bright paint. Daniel didn't say much at all. He just kept tracing the condensation ring on his beer glass, eyes flicking toward me every few seconds as if he was afraid I'd burst into tears or flames. I didn't know which I was closer to. The truth is, it wasn't just about the server. Not really. It was about everything that came before her words. Months of being polite, being patient, being the understanding one. I'd been swallowing discomfort so often that when someone finally poked at me, even lightly, I exploded like a balloon filled with needles instead of air. I remember staring at my untouched glass of water, the lemon slice floating lazily on top. I wanted to cry, but not because of what she said. I wanted to cry because I didn't recognize myself in that moment. The woman who snapped, who turned cold and sharp in public. I'd always been composed, gentle even when people were rude, but now everything felt amplified, raw, unfiltered. Marissa tried breaking the silence. Hey, Violet, you okay? You handled that pretty calmly, honestly. Calmly. If that was calm, then God help me when I actually lose it. I forced a smile. Yeah, I'm fine, just tired, I guess. Daniel glanced up, his voice cautious. She shouldn't have said that, but maybe what? I interrupted, a little too quickly. He hesitated. Maybe it wasn't worth reacting to. She was being unprofessional, sure, but sometimes people just don't think before they talk. I swallowed hard, biting back my first response. He wasn't wrong, but something about the way he said it, gentle, dismissive, made me feel small. Like my feelings were a bump in the road we could just drive over and forget. I know, I whispered. You're right. He reached out, his fingers brushing mine, trying to be kind. But my hand felt heavy, cold. I couldn't bring myself to meet his eyes. He didn't understand. He couldn't. He'd never been treated like he was invisible, or worse, like he was only half a person because of what his body was doing. When you're pregnant, everyone feels like they have a right to comment. Your size, your food, your emotions, your body. They'll say things to your face they'd never say to anyone else, and you're expected to laugh it off, to smile, to not take it personally. I'd been doing that for 8 long months. That night, I realized something I hadn't before. I wasn't mad at the server. I was mad at myself for laughing off every little jab, every condescending, "Oh, you're glowing," that really meant, "You look exhausted." Every, "How's the baby?" when no one asked how I was. By the time the check came, I could barely taste the air. My skin prickled with heat. Every time someone walked by, I felt like they were whispering about me. When the new server handed us the bill, his voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry about earlier," he said quietly. "That shouldn't have happened." I froze. Had he heard? "Did everyone hear?" I smiled weakly. "It's fine. Thank you." But as we stood to leave, I caught sight of her, the first server, standing behind the bar. She wasn't looking at me, not directly, but I could feel it. That invisible thread of tension between us. Our eyes met for half a second. She looked away first. That's when guilt hit me, sudden and sharp. Because for all I knew, maybe she was just having a bad day too. Maybe she didn't mean it the way it came out. Maybe I'd turned a stupid throwaway comment into a war. And the more I thought about it, the worse I felt. In the car, Daniel started the engine, the radio humming low in the background. He didn't speak right away. I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur into soft streaks of gold. Finally, he said, "You sure you're okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. He nodded, like he'd been expecting that answer. "Hormones, maybe?" he said softly. I know he didn't mean it cruelly, but it felt like a knife. Hormones, that magic word that wipes away a woman's feelings and replaces them with chemical excuses. I bit my lip so hard I tasted. "Iron, I guess," I murmured. "Maybe." We drove in silence after that. Every red light felt longer than it should have. When we got home, I went straight to the bathroom and turned on the tap, just to hear something other than my own thoughts. I looked at myself in the mirror. Pale skin, tired eyes, hair pulled back too tight. My reflection didn't look angry. It looked haunted, I whispered. Why did I care so much? But the mirror didn't have an answer. Later that night, as Daniel slept beside me, I kept replaying it, her voice, my voice, the way the whole room had turned cold. I could still hear the echo of my own words like a slap in the dark. "Would you like us to order less?" It wasn't the words themselves. It was what they meant. It was me saying, "I see your attitude, and I won't take it." It was strength, but it was also pain, and I didn't know which one defined me more anymore. The next few days blurred together, but that night wouldn't leave me. It stuck to me like smoke, invisible but suffocating. Every time I tried to think about work, or the baby, or what to make for dinner, that moment replayed itself in perfect clarity. Her voice, my voice, the silence. It wasn't even what I said that haunted me. It was how I said it. That tone, sharp, cold. I didn't even recognize it coming out of my own mouth. Maybe it sounds silly, but I started second-guessing everything after that night. I'd walk into the kitchen, look at Daniel, and wonder if he saw me differently now. If that little moment changed something in the way he looked at me. If, maybe, in his eyes, I'd gone from his calm, funny wife to the hormonal, unpredictable woman who snapped at strangers over oysters. He never said anything cruel. He never even brought it up again. But silence can say a lot when you're listening too hard. Marissa texted me the next morning. "Ignore that woman. You did nothing wrong. She was rude and unprofessional." I thanked her, but I didn't believe her, because deep down I wasn't angry anymore. I was ashamed. I'd always prided myself on staying composed. I'd built my whole life around being rational, kind, measured. I taught my students to breathe before reacting, to think before speaking. So why hadn't I done the same? I tried convincing myself it was hormones, but even that felt like an excuse. This wasn't just pregnancy talking. This was something deeper. a crack in my patience I hadn't noticed until it split open. 3 days later, I found myself driving past that same raw bar again. I hadn't planned it. I was just running errands nearby, and when I stopped at a red light, there it was, glowing softly through the glass. The same gold lighting, the same marble counters. I stared at it for too long. Part of me wanted to walk in and apologize. Another part of me wanted to walk in and defend myself all over again. Instead, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, feeling this strange ache in my chest. That place used to mean something. It used to be ours, Daniel's and mine. Now it felt tainted, like the memory itself had spoiled. That night, when Daniel came home, I asked him a question that surprised even me. Do you think I overreacted? He looked up from his phone. What do you mean? At the restaurant. With the server. He hesitated, which was answer enough, but then he sighed and said, I think it just got awkward. You didn't do anything terrible, but maybe it didn't need to escalate. You know, I nodded. My throat tightened. Yeah, I know. He smiled softly, trying to lighten the air. Hey, it's over. Forget about it, I smiled back. Yeah. But I didn't forget. I couldn't. A week later, Marissa invited me to lunch. I agreed, craving some kind of normalcy, maybe even forgiveness from the world. We met at a small cafe downtown. Bright daylight, soft music, a calm crowd, the opposite of that raw bar. I was actually smiling again, genuinely smiling, when I heard a voice behind me say, Oh, it's you. I froze. That voice. I turned slowly. It was her, the server. She wasn't in uniform this time. She was wearing a casual gray hoodie, hair tied back, eyes slightly red, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept much. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The cafe's chatter faded around us, replaced by the faint ringing in my ears. Hey, I managed, my voice soft. Hi, she shifted her weight awkwardly. Didn't expect to see you here. Yeah, small city, I guess. I forced a weak laugh, her lips pressed into a line. Then to my surprise, she said, Listen, about that night, I blinked. Yeah? I shouldn't have said what I said, she murmured. I had a long shift. I was frustrated, but that doesn't excuse it. I was rude. I stared at her, my mind blank. I'd been replaying that moment in my head for days, building her up into some villain. And now she was just a tired girl in a hoodie saying sorry over a coffee line. For a second, I didn't even know what to say. It's okay, I said finally. I was rude too. I shouldn't have snapped. She shook her head. No, I crossed a line. I didn't realize you'd take it that way. I almost laughed, not at her, but at how absurdly human it all was. Two women apologizing for a 10-second exchange that had lived rent-free in my brain for a week. It's funny, I said quietly. I spent days feeling guilty. I even drove past the restaurant once, just to look at it. Her eyes softened. You did? Yeah, I said. I don't know why. I guess I just felt unfinished. We stood there in silence for a beat. Then she smiled. Just a small, weary smile. Well, consider it finished. And somehow that was enough. When I got home later, I told Daniel what happened. He smiled, a real one this time, and kissed my forehead. See? The universe handled it. Maybe he was right. Maybe it did. But that night, as I lay awake, I realized something. The guilt had faded, but the lesson remained. Heavier. Deeper. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It was about realizing how thin the line is between patience and pride. How one bad moment can twist your reflection into something unrecognizable. And how easy it is to mistake exhaustion for cruelty, in yourself and in others. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. For a few days after that cafe encounter, I really did believe it was over. It was almost peaceful, like I'd finally exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. The tension with Daniel softened too. He started talking more about baby names again, making bad jokes about diaper duty. Life felt simple, normal, right? But peace is fragile, isn't it? One strange detail, one random coincidence, and suddenly, you're right back where you started, questioning everything. It began at my prenatal appointment the following week. The clinic was one of those cozy private ones, soft lighting, pastel walls, a little fountain trickling in the corner. I'd gone there for months and everyone knew me by name. It was my bubble of calm. That morning, though, the receptionist was new. She had this distracted look, typing too fast, barely glancing up when she handed me the intake form. "Dr. Harmon's running a few minutes behind," she said. "You can have a seat." I sat in the waiting area, scrolling my phone, trying not to think too much. That's when I heard it. The name. "Emily?" The nurse called. My head snapped up. That voice. It was the same one. Soft, slightly husky, unmistakable. The server. I blinked hard. No, it couldn't be. What were the odds? But then she walked out of one of the exam rooms. Same dark hair, tied up. Same slightly uneven stride. Except now she was in scrubs, a badge clipped to her chest. Emily, medical assistant. She didn't see me at first. She was guiding another patient out, clipboard in hand, laughing softly at something the woman said. She looked different here. Softer, professional. Not the smirking server I remembered. Not the tired girl from the cafe. Just a person, doing her job. For a second, I didn't know how to feel. Shock, maybe. Or embarrassment. Or something that didn't have a name yet. When she finally glanced my way, her eyes widened slightly. Recognition flickered, followed by something unreadable. Not hostility, something gentler. Maybe even surprise. "Oh," she said quietly. "Hi. Hi," I echoed. The nurse at the counter looked between us, curious. "You two know each other?" Emily hesitated. "Yeah," she said after a moment. "Kind of." She smiled. A real one this time, and I smiled back. Awkwardly. After that, she disappeared into another room, and I sat there staring at the soft green walls, my heart doing this uneven stutter. When Dr. Harmon finally called me in, I could barely focus on her voice. She was talking about the usual things. Weight, blood pressure, next ultrasound. But my mind was somewhere else. The same woman who'd made me question my own kindness. Now worked in the same clinic helping mothers-to-be. The irony wasn't lost on me. As I left the office, I caught sight of her again near the front desk. She was talking to a nurse, smiling about something. When she noticed me, she gave a small wave, hesitant, polite. I almost walked past without saying anything. But something in me wouldn't let me. "Hey," I said softly. She turned. "Hi. I didn't know you worked here," I said. "Yeah," she said with a faint laugh. "It's my day job. The restaurant's just weekends when they need help." I nodded, unsure what else to say. Then before I could stop myself, I blurted, "That night, it really got to me, you know." Her smile faded slightly. "Yeah, me too." There was a pause. She glanced around, lowering her voice. "I was going through some stuff then. My mom was in the hospital. I shouldn't have taken it out on anyone." I felt my throat tighten. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't know." She shrugged lightly. "How could you?" For a moment, it was quiet. Just two people standing in a hallway full of waiting mothers and quiet machines. Then she said something that stayed with me ever since. "You know, people forget servers are human too. We see hundreds of faces every day. Sometimes we slip. Sometimes we misread someone's energy. You think you're joking and suddenly it's not funny. And then you go home and think about it all night, wondering why you said what you said." I stared at her, feeling that strange, full ache in my chest again. "I've been thinking about it all night, too," I whispered. She smiled sadly. "Guess that makes us even." And then, just like that, it was over. She turned back to her work, and I walked out into the sunlight. The wind felt colder that day, and I realized something I hadn't before. We both carried guilt from that night, but for different reasons. I'd felt misunderstood. She'd felt judged. Neither of us had been completely wrong. We were just two exhausted women colliding at the wrong moment in time. Driving home, I felt lighter. But in the corner of my mind, something still stirred. A faint unease, a whisper of unfinished business. Because later that week, when I went to pick up my test results, the nurse mentioned something strange. "Oh, Dr. Harmon had Emily drop off your file earlier," she said casually. "She said she recognized me, for reasons I couldn't explain." The word made my stomach twist. That night, I found myself replaying it again, the way she'd looked at me, the quiet in her voice, the apology that came too easily. And I wondered, what if it hadn't been coincidence that she'd been at that restaurant that night? What if somehow our stories were already entangled, long before the oysters, the jokes, the snapping? The thought lingered like fog. I told myself not to overthink it. Coincidences happen all the time, right? People move between jobs, cross paths, forget faces until something jogs the memory. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the less it felt like coincidence, and the more it felt like a pattern I hadn't noticed forming. A few days after that appointment, I was sitting at the kitchen table sorting through mail when Daniel came in with groceries. He dropped a paper bag on the counter and said, "You'll never guess who I ran into." My heart gave a small, stupid jump. "Who?" "That server from the oyster place. She's working at the market now, apparently. I recognized her when she rang me up. She said to tell you hi." I just stared at him. "Emily?" He frowned. "Is that her name?" "Yeah, maybe. She was nice, actually. Asked how you were feeling." My fingers froze on the envelope I was holding. That uneasy flutter in my chest returned. "What did she say exactly?" I asked. He shrugged, pulling out the milk. "Just small talk. She remembered we were expecting soon. She said she's seen you at the clinic." I didn't know what to say. The kitchen suddenly felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator too loud. Daniel didn't notice. He was humming under his breath, unloading produce. I smiled, or tried to, and said, "That's nice of her." But inside, something cold and unfamiliar crawled up my spine. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the quick change of expression when she'd noticed me at the clinic, the calm apology, the way she'd said, "Guess that makes us even." Even for what? I got up, padded to the living room, and sat on the couch with the lights off. The city outside was a blur of orange and blue. The baby shifted in my belly, a small reminder of reality. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe it was hormones again. But part of me couldn't shake the feeling that Emily's presence was following me, weaving into parts of my life that shouldn't overlap. The next morning, I called the clinic to confirm my next appointment. The receptionist said Emily wouldn't be there anymore. She'd transferred to another branch. Relief and confusion tangled in my chest. Days passed. The tension faded again, replaced by baby preparations, nursery paint, tiny folded onesies. I almost forgot about her, until the postcard arrived. It was tucked between bills and ads. No return address. Just a small picture of the ocean at dusk. Waves tinted pink under a setting sun. On the back, a short note written in looping, careful handwriting. "Be gentle with yourself. You never know what someone else is carrying. E. I read it 3 times, heart pounding harder each time. Daniel came in just as I slipped it into a drawer. What's that? Nothing, I said too quickly. Just junk mail. He didn't push. For the rest of the day, that postcard burned in my mind. I wanted to believe it was kindness. An olive branch. Maybe. But the timing. The lack of return address. The way she'd somehow found my mailing information. It all felt wrong. That night, I pulled it out again. I ran my fingers over the ink. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't personal, not really. But there was something about it that made my skin prickle. I kept hearing her voice. Guess that makes us even. Even. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't want him to think I was spiraling again. But for days afterward, I found myself watching crowds, scanning faces, half expecting her to appear in every grocery line, every waiting room, every shadow that moved too quickly. Then one afternoon, as I was packing the hospital bag, the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The voice on the other end was soft, professional. Hi, Mrs. Palmer. This is St. Agnes Clinic. I just wanted to confirm that you'll be delivering with us, correct? Yes, I said slowly. Wonderful. I'll update your chart accordingly. Oh, by the way, Emily told us to wish you good luck. She said she used to be your patient liaison? I froze. Sorry, what? Emily. She left a note on your file saying she'd worked with you before. She wanted us to pass along her best wishes. My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear the rest. I thanked the caller and hung up, staring at the phone like it had betrayed me. She'd touched my file. Why? And how far did that connection really go? The night after that phone call, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was in the house. Not physically. I wasn't hearing footsteps or doors creaking. But in the corners of my mind, something had settled. Something that watched me from behind my own eyes. Daniel fell asleep quickly, like he always did. I lay next to him, staring at the faint glow of the street lamp slicing through the blinds. That postcard was still hidden in my bedside drawer. I could almost feel it humming through the wood, whispering in the dark. I told myself I'd throw it away in the morning. But when morning came, I couldn't. It felt like proof of what I didn't know, of her existence. Of mine, of the thin, trembling thread between us. By now, I'd started to notice smaller things too. Tiny, quiet things. Like the new nurse at my next appointment who looked just a little too long when she read my file, before quickly setting it down. Or the fact that the receptionist's computer screen flickered right when she typed my name. And once, God, this one still makes my chest tighten. I saw a car idling across the street from our house. It was just after sunset. Headlights dim, engine running soft. I stood by the window for almost a full minute before it pulled away. The next morning, there was a single white rose on our porch. No note, Daniel laughed when I told him. Maybe it's a neighbor thing. Some random kindness project, I smiled back. But the lie got stuck in my throat. I started Googling her name again. Emily Plo's St. Agnes Clinic. Emily Nurse Records. Emily Staff 2018. Nothing. No last name on the clinic site. No social media trail. Just 1,000 Emilys who weren't her. One night, I found myself back in my email archives. I typed Emily into the search bar. And there it was. One message, 3 years old. It was a receipt. From the restaurant, the date, the total, our table number, and under server name, Emily R.I. clicked it open and stared at it until the screen went blurry. And that's when I noticed something else. Attached to the receipt was a short note. One I'd never seen before. Probably automated, I thought at first. But it wasn't. It read, "Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who remind us we're still alive." No signature, no timestamp, Just that one sentence. Sitting there in my inbox for years. That night, I dreamed of her. We were in that dim restaurant again, but everything was wrong. The lights flickered like underwater lanterns, and the other tables were empty. Emily was standing by the counter, wiping an already clean glass. She looked up, smiled, and said, "Even now you don't see it, do you?" I woke up gasping. It took me a full minute to realize my phone was buzzing on the nightstand. An unknown number. I picked up without thinking. Hello? Static. And then, faintly, "Be gentle with yourself." I sat there frozen, heart slamming against my ribs. The same words from the postcard. The same handwriting, now alive in sound. "Who is this?" I whispered. Click. The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. Pale, trembling, wild-eyed. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if what I was seeing was real. Maybe she wasn't following me. Maybe I was following her. The night it happened, the rain never stopped. Not a soft drizzle, but a relentless downpour that hammered the windows like it was trying to get in the kind of rain that made the world. Outside looked smudged and unreal. I was 34, weeks pregnant, sore, tired, and terrified of my own thoughts. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch downstairs, the TV still flickering through an old movie we weren't even watching, and I couldn't shake that dream. "Even now you don't see it, do you?" I got up to check on the baby's room. Everything was set. The crib, the little stuffed lamb I'd bought, the mobile with soft glowing stars that turned silently above. But as I stood there, I realized something was off. The window. It was open. Just an inch. But it was open, and on the sill, wet from the rain, was another white rose. I didn't scream. I didn't even move. I just stared at it. My heart beat louder than the storm. Daniel ran up the stairs when he heard me drop the glass I was holding. "What happened?" "Violet, hey, what's wrong?" I pointed to the window, but when he looked, it was closed. No rose. No water, nothing. He frowned, then walked toward me slowly, speaking like I was something fragile. "You're not sleeping. You're stressed, babe. It's hormones, okay? Maybe you just thought—" "Don't say I imagined it," I snapped. I didn't mean to sound that sharp, but the words tore out of me like glass. He didn't reply. Just rubbed my shoulder gently, as if trying to calm a wild thing. And then he went back downstairs. But I stayed in the room. I couldn't leave. Not yet. I sat on the floor beside the crib, the storm humming through the walls, and pulled out my phone again. The note, the email, the voice. I read them all over and over until my vision blurred, and somewhere between exhaustion and obsession, I made a decision. I was going to find her. So I did something I shouldn't have done. I called the Raw Bar, the same one from 3 years ago. A new voice answered. "Hi. Thanks for calling Oyster and Oak. How can I help you?" "Hi, I used to come there, maybe a few years back. There was a server named Emily. She worked nights mostly. I was just wondering if she's still around." Silence. Then, "Ma'am, are you sure you've got the right place?" Yes, I'm sure." The girl hesitated. I think I know who you mean. "But she doesn't work here anymore. Hasn't for a while." My heart quickened. "Do you know where she went?" "Not really. She paused. "There was an accident, I think. She passed away." My stomach dropped. "What?" "I'm sorry, I don't know the details. But I remember. It was right before the pandemic. She used to work the Raw Bar counter. Really friendly girl. Always laughing." I hung up. I don't remember breathing. Or moving. Just sitting there, staring into the dark, hearing her voice echo from the past. "I see you waddling up. You can't eat here." That laugh. That smirk dead? How could she be dead? And if she was, who sent me the postcard? Who called me? My phone buzzed again. An email this time. No subject, no sender. Just an attachment. A photo. My fingers trembled as I opened it. It was the sonogram picture I'd posted to my private Instagram. The caption I'd written weeks ago was still there. Can't wait to meet you, little bean. But below it, written in faint cursive text that wasn't mine, was something new. Some people never get to meet theirs. I dropped the phone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt the baby move, a sharp, sudden kick, and I gasped out loud. Every sound around me grew louder. The rain, the thunder, the baby monitor crackling with static, and then through the monitor, I swear on everything I love, I heard it. A voice. Soft. Familiar. Violet. Don't let him take her from you. I froze. That voice wasn't Daniel's, and it wasn't mine. That was the moment everything shattered. Reality. Trust, the line between memory and madness. Because suddenly I remembered something I'd buried, something Daniel had begged me to forget. 3 years ago, after one too many nights of oysters and beer. After one too many fights about timing and money and not being ready yet. I had been pregnant before, only 6 weeks along, and when I lost it, Daniel never told anyone. Not even my family. He just said, "We'll try again when you're ready." The next week, we went out to celebrate his promotion at a raw bar, where a young woman with bright blue eyes and a teasing grin served us oysters. Her name tag had said Emily, and she'd told me. I remember now. I think you'd be an amazing mom. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The house felt smaller somehow, like the walls were breathing with me, listening. Daniel went to work the next morning like nothing had happened, kissing my forehead and saying, "Try to rest, okay?" But the way he looked at me before leaving, the brief flicker of worry in his eyes, told me he didn't believe that I could. I sat in the nursery again, staring at the crib, the soft little mobile above it, and that stuffed lamb with its stitched-on smile. Every single thing in that room was a promise I'd made twice, and the memory came back to me like a wave breaking through glass. That night, 3 years ago, the first pregnancy, I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, my knees pulled up to my chest, my body betraying me. Daniel had been at work. The pain, the blood, the silence, it all blurred into a haze. I didn't tell anyone, not even him. I called the clinic instead, and it wasn't some anonymous nurse who picked up. It was her. "St. Agnes Clinic, this is Emily. How can I help you?" I can still hear the warmth in her voice. I told her what was happening. She spoke softly, calmly, guiding me, comforting me. She stayed on the line the whole time, even as I cried so hard I could barely breathe. When it was over, she said, "I'm so sorry, Violet, but you're going to be okay. You'll have another chance. And when you do, love her twice as hard, for both of them." She knew my name. I'd given it to her when she asked for the file, and I never heard from her again, until that night at the restaurant. Until she looked at me and said, "I hope you come back when you're not pregnant so I can get to know the real you." It wasn't sarcasm. It wasn't rudeness. It was recognition. She knew who I was. I was too stunned, too consumed by my own defensiveness to see it then. I'd buried her voice with the rest of that memory, until it started clawing its way back out. The phone calls. The emails. The roses. None of it was random. She wasn't haunting me. She was reminding me. That night, the contractions started. Way too early. I remember gripping the edge of the counter as the pain tore through me. Not just physical, but something deeper, something ancient. I shouted for Daniel. He ran to me, panic flooding his face. We need to go now. The drive to the hospital was a blur of headlights and rain. Every flash of lightning painted the world in white and black, just like the sonogram photo still, burned into my mind. Some people never get to meet theirs. When we reached the ER, everything moved too fast. Nurses rushing, questions, beeping monitors. But in the middle of it all, I saw her, standing by the far wall, calm, radiant, hands clasped in front of her apron. Emily. No one else seemed to notice her, and yet, she was there, as clear as the pain in my chest. She smiled softly. It's okay, Violet. You're not alone. Tears burned down my cheeks. I'm scared, I whispered, not sure if anyone heard me or if I was speaking to her or to myself. I know, she said, but it's not your fault. Her voice was steady, like an anchor in the chaos, and then she walked closer, brushed her hand against mine, and the world went dark. When I woke up, I was in recovery. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Daniel was there, sitting in the chair by the bed, his face buried in his hands. I turned my head slowly. Daniel? He looked up, eyes red. She's okay, he whispered, voice cracking. She's small, but she's okay, I cried then. For her, for me, for the one I never got to meet. The nurse who entered a moment later smiled at me kindly, adjusting the IV. Her name tag caught the light. Emily. My breath hitched. Your name. She laughed softly. Oh yeah, there are like 3 of us on this floor. Weird coincidence, huh? I smiled back weakly. But inside, something settled. A strange peace I hadn't felt in years. Because maybe that's all she ever wanted. Not revenge. Not forgiveness. Just for me to remember. To stop pretending the pain never happened. Weeks later, when I was home and the baby was asleep in her crib, I opened the drawer one last time. The postcard was still there. I turned it over, ready to throw it away. But for the first time, I noticed something faint written along the edge, barely visible, smudged in ink. Thank you for keeping your promise. The next morning, it was gone. And sometimes late at night, when the baby stirs in her sleep, and I hum softly to calm her. I swear I hear another voice humming along with me, not haunting, not hurting, just helping. Maybe that's what forgiveness really is. Not erasing the pain, but learning to live with the ghosts you made until they finally rest. People talk about postpartum joy like it's a sunrise, but for me, it felt more like standing on a cliff, staring at the sea, beautiful, vast, but full of things that could swallow you whole if you looked too long. Everyone kept saying how strong I was. How brave, the truth. I wasn't brave, I was just awake. Awake in the middle of the night, feeding her under the dim glow of the nursery lamp. Awake when Daniel slept beside me, his breathing steady, his dreams light, awake, when memories crept in like ghosts wearing my old skin. Sometimes I'd catch myself whispering to the baby things I never said out loud before. I'm sorry. I didn't forget. You. I hope you can forgive me. I didn't even know who I was speaking to. Her. Or the one before her. And maybe it didn't matter. Because for the first time, I could finally say those words without falling apart. It took a few weeks before I dared to step out again, to walk down the same street where everything began. The world looked the same, but I didn't. The old raw bar was still there, oyster and oak, but it had changed. New sign, new menu, new staff. Still, I pushed the door open. A rush of cold air, the smell of brine and lemon, A girl behind the counter smiled. "Hi there. Table for one?" I nodded, adjusting the strap of the baby carrier against my chest. As she led me to a seat, I caught a glimpse of the name on her tag. Amelia. Close enough to make my chest ache. She placed a water glass in front of me and said, "Cute baby. She's got your eyes." "Thank you," I said softly. "What's yours?" "Oh, she's new here," another waiter called from behind. "Still learning the ropes," the girl laughed. "Yeah, first week. Trying to remember which oyster is which." I smiled at that. A small, sad smile. "Let me guess," I said. "Start with the Brinier ones. East Coast usually runs saltier. It's all about where they grew up." Her eyes lit up. "Really? That's actually super helpful, thank you."
She walked away, and I felt a strange warmth in my chest, like something invisible had just exhaled after lunch. I left a tip on the table, a little extra, folded into the check, and written on the napkin, almost without thinking. I scribbled, "Be gentle with yourself." As I stepped outside, the sun broke through the clouds, and I realized that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. It's been months now. The nightmares stopped. The calls stopped. The emails, the roses, all gone. But every now and then, when I rock my daughter to sleep, she'll stare past me, at the wall, or the window, and smile at something I can't see. And I don't ask who she's smiling at, because some questions don't need answers. Some truths just live quietly inside you. I used to think ghosts were the people we'd lost. Now I think they're the moments we never forgave ourselves for. And once you finally do, once you face them, name them, and let them breathe, they stop haunting you. They just stay beside you, like a shadow, like love. And maybe that's what Emily was all along. Not a haunting, not a curse, just a whisper from the part of me that never stopped grieving, the part that needed to be heard now. When people ask me if I believe in ghosts, I tell them no. I believe in reminders, the kind that follow you until you learn the lesson you were too scared to face. And sometimes, those reminders wear a name tag and a smile that feels too familiar. So, was I wrong for snapping that night? Maybe, maybe not. But now I know this. Every time we lash out, every time we break, there's a wound underneath that just wants to be seen. I wasn't cruel. I was hurting. And if I could go back, I wouldn't apologize for defending myself, but I'd say thank you for forcing me to remember. Because in the end, she gave me something no one else could, peace, and a reason to finally forgive myself. Years have passed since that night. The baby I carried, my little girl, our miracle, is now toddling around, chasing shadows and giggling at things only she seems to notice. Daniel and I, we survived it all, in the quiet way couples do. Small smiles, shared silences, unspoken apologies, and the kind of love that doesn't need fireworks to prove itself. But I still think about her, Emily. I never met her again in person. I never called. She disappeared into the world the way ghosts do, leaving reminders instead of explanations, lessons instead of closure. And yet, I know she's still here, in a way that doesn't haunt me. She's in the way I breathe through anger now. She's in the way I recognize pain in strangers without judging. She's in the way I rock my daughter to sleep and whisper truths I never said aloud before. I record this confession now, not for anyone in particular, though maybe someday someone will hear it. Maybe they'll hear it and feel what I felt that night at the raw bar. When I snapped, I thought I was defending myself. I was. But What I didn't realize then was that I was also defending all the pain I hadn't allowed myself to name, the grief I hadn't faced, the moments I had buried so deep that I thought forgetting them would make me whole. It did and single quotes T. Emily reminded me that pain cannot be buried. It only grows until someone finally sees it. And maybe that's why she appeared. Not to punish me, not to scare me, but to teach me, to make me see. I wonder sometimes if she knew I would survive it all, if she knew I'd carry that lesson forward. Because here's the truth, the one I want anyone listening to understand. We all have ghosts. Some wear names, some wear uniforms, some smile at us when we're not looking. But the ghosts that matter aren't the ones that scare us. They're the ones that demand we see ourselves. So, to anyone out there who's ever snapped at someone, lashed out, or regretted words that came too fast, I ask you this. What if your anger wasn't the end? What if it was the beginning of your awakening? What if the person who pushed you was actually giving you a gift you didn't know you needed? I don't know the answers. I only know this. I learned to forgive. I learned to recognize the ghosts, name them, and let them rest. And maybe, someday, when you face your own ghost, the one wearing a name tag, a smile, or just a memory, you'll do the same, because some lessons arrive in strange ways, in places we never expect, from people we almost push away. And when you finally see them clearly, you'll know that every moment, every snap, every tear, every whispered apology was never wasted. It was necessary to become the person you are meant to be.